guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the To Hull and Back podcast. We're delighted to have Leon Cort, an ex-Tiger, on the podcast with us today. Obviously, he was with us under the Peter Taylor era, 2004 till 2006, the League One promotion, and then the consolidation in the Championship seasons. How are you doing today, Leon? Are we good?
I'm really good, mate. Really good, really good. I'm happy to be here. Hope you guys are all right yourself.
Yeah, no, we're not bad. We're okay. A bit of a lackluster game today that we watched. I'm kind of glad that you didn't watch it. So what we'll do then is this episode, we're going to have about a half an hour chat with Leon, which is going to talk about his time as a Tiger, obviously, and then me and Joel are going to have a chat and be as positive as possible about the Stoke game, if we can find any positives to chat about, and then the upcoming games against Bournemouth and Blackburn and Bournemouth, which will be tough, but we'll struggle them through as we always do. So starters then, obviously, Leon was with us, like I said, in 2004. He was a Peter Taylor signing. So the first question I'm going to give to you at the moment, Leon, is how did joining Hull City come about? Was it a Peter Taylor thing, or was you always interested in joining this club? Was there feelers out before?
Yeah, I think around that time, in the early 2000s, everyone was aware of how big Hull were becoming. You know, with the progress in the league, etc., and jumping up the leagues. I didn't think anything of Hull at the time until Peter Taylor came down to Southend to train us 2 days while the manager was off sick to do him a favour, and he just said to me, "When's your contract up?" And I was like, "Oh, it's the end of the season." So he said, "Just don't sign it. Don't sign." I said, "Well, you know, I'm still a young lad. I've got security. I need security. I've got a young family." He goes, "No, I promise you, I'm going to come and get you at the end of the season." So I said, "All right, I'll hold out," because I had to take the opportunity to go to Hull. You know, with the way they would go in and the stadium, it was a whole different level compared to Southend. So I said, "Okay, all right, I'll hang out." And he did come back at the end of the season. I went through a bit of stick with the Southend fan because I wouldn't sign, but it was the right move for me at the time. So that's how that move actually came about, because he saw me in training and he liked me and he wanted me to come, and he knew my brother from England under 21s because he had him there. So that's where the connection really kicked off, really.
Obviously, older brother Carl.
Yeah.
You see, it's interesting, really, because obviously we all knew that you two were brothers even at the time, because you played against each other when you were a Hull City player when he was at Wolves, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
But one thing that I didn't know, which after chatting to you, I went to check up on, you're Ruben Loftus-Cheek's half brother.
Yeah.
All right, okay, so because that surprised me. So what is he then? Is he on your dad's side or is he your mum's side?
No, it's my dad's side. I only really found out like it's my God, in 2010 that he was my half brother. Because I was at Burnley and I was sitting in a changing room, and you only get fan mail.
Yeah.
And the secretary gave me my fan mail, and I thought it was just another fan. So I was reading it. I was like, "Who is that?" Saying he's related to me, and it's a big long letter. And he goes, "Oh, call this number, and when you come back to London, when the season's over, we would like to meet you." So I thought, "All right, I'll go." I went home, and I called the number because I thought it might be a prank or something. And I called the number, and it was. It was crazy how it all came about. Yeah.
All right. Do you now like sort of follow his career with intent? Are you kind of do you give him any sort of advice? Is there anything there with him? Do you stay in contact and that?
Yeah, I mean we're in contact. To be honest with you, I don't really like, it's his career, and I like to let him just do his own thing. He's a really mature guy, and he's going about his work the right way. No, but to be honest with you, when we actually do see each other, like maybe sometimes Christmas time and stuff, we don't really talk about football that much, to be honest with you. We just we speak now and again, and certain games and certain managers, what was he like, etc. But no, we don't really talk about football that much.
See, because the thing is, obviously, with the footballing family, I bet you're all sick to death for talking about football sometimes. We seem to forget that, don't we? You can probably want your private life to actually be non-football related. I can imagine it gets a bit much. So obviously now retired. Your last club was Charlton Athletic, as far as I'm aware. Are you still involved in football then?
Yeah, I'm a football agent now with Stella Group. Is the football agency used to look after me when I was playing. So I work in France a lot. Obviously, I can't travel at the moment because of the whole situation with COVID, but I've got a couple of businesses that I'm doing in London, so I'm pretty busy at the minute, So that's not football related, the business I do, but but I'm still in football, talking to players in France. I helped with the Konate deal to Liverpool, so the things like that. That's So I'm pretty busy.
See, now that you've said that, I'm kind of interested because obviously football agents nowadays do sometimes get a bit of stick. I mean, obviously, I think all football agents probably work in different ways and try and take different. Some are probably more financially motivated than more than they are the player, for example. So what? Give us some insight into what it's like to be a football agent. Do you sort of are you a major driving force in making transfers between clubs, or does the player ask you to find them a move? How does it work?
Well, first off, when you approach the player, if they're a decent player, they get a number of people approaching them. But you have to, sell yourself in a way to say that, we can do the best for you as the player. I mean, obviously it's difficult because they don't know you, but they have to build up a bit of trust. I have, sometimes I have meetings with the families, talk to them, explain to them what the situation is, how, we're a massive company, we can do the best for the player, get them the right move, what they want, and it's not all financial because they have the last call, they have to say in what they want to do. So it's about using the best agency to look after you and get the right things for you. There's a lot of things that the players think they can do themselves, where an agency like Jonathan Barnett and David Manasseh, they can actually pull things off with chairman and directors to get the right thing for you, which if a player is going in there on his own, he won't know. So it's important to have that backing sometimes. So it's really about what we can do for you, and a bit of trust as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine because obviously, your bigger agents that get moves for Cristiano Ronaldo. I think there was a well publicized one that Wolves had the same agent for the majority of the players they were signing, and the kind of the mechanics behind it is just always intrigued me. So it's interesting to know that obviously that football agents in general, like yourself, you have got the players' best interests at heart. It's just because it can sometimes get a bit misconstrued in the media, and that I think clubs can give them a bit of flack too, can't they? I think in terms of trying to force players out of clubs kind of thing. So it's interesting to hear that. But back on Hull City then, obviously you signed for us in 2004, like you said. Peter Taylor said he'd come and get you, and he did. So what interests me is obviously that was a back-to-back promotion season. We'd literally just got promoted the season before from League 2 or Division 3 it was back then to the newly formed League 1. When you signed, what was actually the aim of the club that season? I know because we went up, but usually when you get promoted, a club's aim is to maybe consolidate mid-table, maybe have a base to push on for promotion in a couple of seasons. But we went straight up. Was that explained to you as an aim of the club, or was it just a welcome surprise?
No, that was in no uncertain terms. That was what it was. When I came from London, I went to the KC at the time. I met Peter Taylor there and Adam Pearson, and they both said to me we want promotion. There's no second. We need promotion. So that was the aim from the get-go.
All right, because you see, because I asked Phil Brown a similar question because he kept us up one season, we'd literally survived by the skin of our teeth, and then we get promoted the next season, and it's always, I think, interesting for fans to sort of know what aims are within the club, because for me as a fan, we genuinely don't expect to be fighting for promotion after you've had, maybe come up from the league below. I know a few teams do it because momentum has a big part to play in it. Confidence, you're used to winning. It can carry you through. A few teams have done it from League 1 to the Premier League, for example. So it's the fact that they actually came to you and said, no, we're going up this season is probably a huge credit to the club. And obviously the recruitment that they saw in you, a promotion winning centre-back, which is probably a compliment to yourself. I know you've made quite a career of being a goal-scoring centre-back. I know I'm just looking at your stats here. You got 38 goals in 417 games in total. And for Hull City, you had 10 goals in 86, which is pretty good going for a centre-half at any club. You played for 10 across your career, if I'm right there. Millwall, Forest Green Rovers, Stevenage Borough, Southend, Hull City, Crystal Palace, Stoke City twice, loaned to a permanent, Burnley, Preston, Charlton, loaned to permanent, and then obviously the end of your career. I think a couple of the questions that we got asked by City fans to ask you, and I think you probably knew what was coming. Obviously, you left us to join Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Was that a move that maybe you look back on now with a bit of regret, or at the time, like what was your reasoning for jumping from Championship club to another Championship club kind of thing? Because a lot of City fans probably felt that you were quite comfortable in this side.
Yeah, it wasn't any ulterior motive to excuse me, to go to Crystal Palace straight away. But obviously, Peter Taylor brought me to Hull, and then he left. He was going anyway. I enjoyed my time at Hull. I mean, when I first started at Hull, I started off. I had a nightmare. I couldn't get any form. I remember playing against Huddersfield away. We lost 4-1, and I looked up in the away end where the Hull fans were, and they were looking at me like, "What have we signed here?" That's how bad it was. So I had to sort myself out, and get myself right, and eventually did, obviously. But when Peter Taylor left, he called me and said, "Look, I'm going to Palace. I'm going to put in a 1.5 million bid for you to come back down London." And obviously, I'm a London guy. My family's situated in London. It's a no-brainer, really. It's Crystal Palace. They probably had more at the time facilities to make another push for promotion. I had to take it. It's a move that I had to take. And it's not like I wanted to leave Hull because I didn't like it. I loved my time at Hull, but I had to go to Palace.
Yeah, I think it's easy as fans to probably forget that players are human beings. They've got families. They've got lives. You've got places where you live. Hull is a significant distance away from London, like you say. Yeah. So, more than saying you potentially moved on for reasons other than the fact to be closer to your family, it's a lot easier. And I mean, let's be honest, Crystal Palace are a bigger club than us. I mean, if you're looking at it from a career standpoint, in terms of moving on to try and progress your career and have a better chance at playing at a higher level, etc. I mean, I know you ended up being a Premier League player at some point. Was it with Stoke? So you obviously had aspirations to play at a higher level, and I mean, kudos to you. You went for it. I mean, I think the thing is obviously. A lot of fans probably started to see the best of you, like you say, and they were just kind of gutted to see you go. So I think I know me personally, I didn't hold any sort of thing against you. I always loved you as a defender. I mean, I was a kid in the stands watching you. It was good. It's kind of weird to be sat interviewing you kind of thing, but obviously, so that squad. Then we'll come on to the squad that you were with under Peter Taylor, because it was some squad if you think about it. Many of those players ended up being Premier League players for us. So I'm looking at the squad list we've got here. So we've got the likes of Boaz Myhill, Andy Dawson, Ian Ashby, Mark Joseph, Nick Barmby, Ben Burgess, John Walters, Stuart Green, who obviously came to Palace as well. Aaron Wilbraham, Andy Hesenthaler, Craig Fagan, Kevin Ellis. It was a really good squad. Did you, as a player, when you're in that changing room, then did you look around at the likes of, like, say, Ian Ashby and Boaz Myhill and think these guys are going to be Premier League footballers in the future? Or did you always maybe in the back of your mind think, maybe this is Hull City's level? Obviously, when we consolidated in the Championship kind of thing, because it's pretty weird for players to play in all four divisions, but obviously the likes of Ashby and Dawson and the likes did. So do you think, did you always think they had that in them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I went there, the contrast of it was chalk and cheese from Southend to Hull. I mean, going at Southend, it was like not easy, but it wasn't that they didn't have the same fight as the Hull guys. And when I went to Hull, it was totally different. I mean, those guys were warriors. And when I mean warriors, I mean warriors. They wanted to win badly. Ashby, the way he used to get on at the guys to perform, it was like it was we're going to war every week. And that's what really helped propel me as well. It was ruthless. It was ruthless because they knew the job that they needed to do, and they were good technically on the ball. They were good. They were really good players. Stuart Green, Andy Dawson, the guys you mentioned, top players. They were good players, and in the games, it was tough. It was tough sometimes because it hit me for 6 because I come from Southend where it wasn't too much pressure. Coming to Hull, have to get promotion. I remember one time in a game, because I'm not the sort of guy to take things personally. I take it as a booster. Like, okay, I'll show you. I can't remember who was playing at the KC, and it was probably my second or third game. And I must have done because I wasn't the best on the ball. I know that I was more a defender first. And I made a mistake, and Ashby turned to me and said, "I knew we shouldn't have bloody signed you." And I was thinking to myself, "What?" I was like, "No way! Like, I can't. I'll show you. I'll show you." And that's what I did. And from then on, I just really kicked on a bit, because sometimes you need that push. Like, if you probably say that to a player nowadays, they might fall on the floor and start crying. But those guys there, at the time, they're really, really tough guys, and you had to perform. If you didn't perform, they'd want you out of the team. So that was it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally going to ask that as a follow-on from that. Like, obviously, can't be nice as a player to hear, like, your teammate, your captain at the time, sort of regretting you as the signing. Can't be very good. But I think it all comes down to character, doesn't it? Like you say, you took that as an excuse to better yourself at maybe your weaker sides of your game and prove to him wrong. Because, like you say, nowadays it's probably easier to sort of shake that responsibility away and be like, well, he was nasty to me, and force a move somewhere and stop playing and train with the under-23s kind of thing. But exactly. No, like you said, it was a very, I mean, when you think about that side, like you say, it was a very tough side. I mean, one thing I'll ask you though, obviously, we signed Nick Barmby the same season that you signed. What was it like to have a player, obviously, because he dropped from the Premier League to come to us in League One? It was some coup. What was it like to have somebody like Nick Barmby in the changing room then, for the likes of yourself? Like, obviously you came from Southend, where you say, the caliber of player was maybe a little less than it was at City at the time, but then to come in with an ex-England Premier League player into the changing room, same team as you, was it quite motivational? Did you pick his brains quite often, or what was it like?
No, he was really good. I mean, I don't think I ever had a falling out with Barnes. He was such a calm. He was a calm, placid guy. You could see his quality in training. Obviously his legs wasn't what they were because he was getting on a bit at the time, but he was really clever. He was so clever in the way he played. Just got himself into little areas where you couldn't mark him. Technically, he was brilliant. Set up a couple of goals for me, I think. No, he was brilliant. I really liked working with Barnes. Because sometimes when you get a player coming down from the Premier League, because you can't do some of the things they can do. It's known they'll get frustrated with you. But he was never like that. He just went about it quietly, fitted in with the boys straight away. Everyone liked him. It was a really good signing from Peter Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like you say, it can be quite maybe upset the dressing room kind of thing to bring in a player of that quality, have him sort of on a pedestal. But I think obviously with him being a whole boy, wanting to come back to his hometown club and sort of progress us up the leagues in a time where we were ascending was probably the best time for us to get him. Certainly a surprise transfer, but one that obviously went down in history in the end. But I thought it'd always be interesting to know how the other players sort of perceived him in the changing room and things like that. Because then you've got like the other end of the scale, like we say with Ian Ashby. What was it like then having Ashby as the captain? Was he just literally captain material from the start? Did he demand nothing less than 100% all the time? Was he a catalyst for the majority of the success? Because he's heralded obviously as a bit of a legend in Hull City colours.
Yeah, he was on you. I mean, he was on you all the time. Sometimes, when you look back, sometimes you think, all right, Ash, that was over the top. That was a bit harsh. But that's what it's like in the dressing room sometimes with people like that. I can imagine probably Roy Keane being the same. He pushed players on, but sometimes he can be a little bit over the top. But yeah, no, he was a good captain. He was a good captain. Me and him had our spats. Don't get me wrong, we really did. Had our spats. But sometimes when I was in the wrong, I wouldn't say anything. But sometimes when I felt like no, that was wrong, I would have a pop at him back, and he wouldn't. And the thing is, Ashby, he wouldn't take anything personally. After the game, back on the coach, he'd be fine. But on the pitch, like it's demanding. It's football. It's not. You can't baby people. You have to get people to get you results, and to be fair to him, that's what he did.
I think what we'll do then now is because I feel like this one would be a good set of questions. I know you might have to travel your mind back, obviously quite a distance now. We're going back a few years, but I'm going to ask you. Do you know, like, if you've ever watched Soccer AM and they do the the best and worst of stuff like that? I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for that changing room of players at the time. So I think who had the worst fashion sense of that whole City squad?
Oh, without a doubt, Stuart Elliott. God, he was just, I don't know what he was doing. It was just, definitely Stuart Elliott. Mr.
Stuart Elliott.
No effort whatsoever.
what was his dress sense like then? Because obviously, we all know he's quite highly religious, was it?
It was just like an old man. It was just like a old man just coming to training every day. Like Stu, like, you're only in your 20s, mate. To be fair to him, he didn't care. He didn't care. He was comfortable the way he was, but he still hammer him, though.
Yeah, I mean, he scored now on over 30 goals, didn't he, that season? So he can dress how he wants. I'm not bothered.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who was then the best singer?
Oof. Who was always singing? Do you know what? I don't remember. I remember any new signing would come in. They had to do a song. Yeah. I can't remember. Damo likes a song now and again. He fancied himself to be a bit of a singer sometimes. Damo.
David Delaney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, to be fair, yeah. What about the worst singer then?
The worst singer? Do you know what? I'll be honest with you, there wasn't many singers. Trying to think. I think Danny Allsop one time done a song. And his little Aussie accent wasn't great. Yeah, he was good.
All right then. So I'm trying to scrape the barrel for some of these. Then, what about? And I think this is going to be an interesting one because obviously you'll be a contender. Who was the best header at the club?
Well, excluding me.
Well, include yourself if you want to.
It's got to be me, isn't it?
What would you bet on yourself against Stuart Elliott?
Yeah. You know what? Because he wasn't as big as me. He had a good spring, but the thing is, I'm 6'4", and I had a good spring as well. So, what? No, do you know why I'm taking me? Do you know why I'm saying me? Because I always had the big 6 footers marking me. The big 6 footers weren't marking Stuart Elliott at the time, even though he got in on.
But maybe that's why Stuart Elliott scored so many more.
Maybe, but to be fair to him, they had the 6 footers marking him in the box from crosses in open play. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that one's up for debate, but I'm still taking me though.
What about the club's hard man? Who, I mean, I think there's probably going to be 2 or 3 you could probably choose from here. But who was the guy that you would not mess with in training? Who you would, maybe not throw a challenge into, just in case he took your head off?
No, do you know what? I'd probably challenge anyone in training. Yeah.
What, you're throwing your hat in the ring as the hardest man at the hardest man at the club at the time.
But you know what the funny thing is though? Apart from me, think about that squad at the time. Everyone in that squad at the time would go hell for leather in training, apart from Stuart Green. Everyone will tackle really hard in training, apart from Stuart Green. So it was tough.
Who was the biggest slacker in training then? Who? Obviously, Stuart Green was probably in terms of going out of challenges or whatever. But who would turn up to training and do the absolute bare minimum?
You probably say Jason Price.
Yeah, Pricey.
Yeah, he's very laid back. He's not going to bust the gut in training, Pricey. No, not at all. No. Yeah, it's definitely Jason Price, I'd say.
Okay. What we'll do then, I think Joel's got a couple of questions from. We've had a couple on Twitter. I think the a couple that he can ask you. So if you want to fire away, Joel.
Yeah, but there's 2 here. They're both relating to your brother Carl. The first one is, what was it like to play against him?
Yeah, no, that was really good, really good. Because he's where he'd been in his career. For me to actually play against him, which I probably thought I'd never do, was actually a dream come true. So to play against him, I got a couple of kicks and everything. And when I scored that first goal against Wolves, I was absolutely buzzing. But then he scored the winner in the 90th minute, which absolutely my phone was blowing up after the game, laughing and etc. But it was a good game. That was a good game, but unfortunately we didn't get the win.
And another one is, would it have ever been a possibility for him to come and join you at Hull?
At that time, it wasn't. But then he was going to come to Palace when I was there. he came to the training ground for a medical, but he actually failed the medical. That's why we didn't sign him. Yeah, but he was inches away from joining me at Palace.
So would you think you'd have liked to have played in the same team as Carl then? Is that something you would have wanted to do?
Yeah. It's quite rare, isn't it? It's quite rare for two brothers to play in the same team. But no, that would have been good. I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah. So I think we've only got a couple of questions left then. I think the one that probably everybody's wanting to ask us about, and I think you knew it was coming. I think you did an interview, didn't you? Was it with the supporters club about a certain celebration? Obviously, you came back to the KC as a Crystal Palace player, and you managed to score one of your trademark goals. And the celebration, I think, by quite a few City fans was maybe deemed to be a bit overzealous, considering you just left us, kind of thing. So what's your explanation for that one? What was the reasoning behind it?
I'll tell you what, right? Do you know what, that celebration was nothing to do with anything to do with Hull. What it was is that it's the first time in my career I've been bought and back then it was a substantial amount of money to Crystal Palace. I went to Crystal Palace. The players, I think they just come down from the Premier League maybe a year or two before. So, and I got bought by Peter Taylor. So the players at Palace weren't too sure about me anyway. So that was an added pressure. And for me to go there and score like so many goals for them very early on in the season, and when I hit that one, it was like, wow, like, you know, I'm really going to impress people, you know. So it was a bit of a release of pressure. So when I scored that goal, you know, when I saw it go past Boaz in the bottom corner, it wasn't anything to do with, oh, I'm celebrating against Hull. It was just, wow, you know what I mean? I'm really started the season well. And I remember that goal, it was just a cloud. When it went in, I didn't see anything around me. I just ran off celebrating. And then when I stopped, I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Yeah. You know, and I saw some fans of the far side like booing me. I was like, oh no, like, Leon, what are you doing? You know, and that's all it was. It was nothing to do, because it was against Hull, nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask the follow up there, saying, obviously, was there a stage where you looked back at that and thought, maybe I should have done that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, definitely. Because, like I say, I had a good time. There's not one bad time I had at Hull. You know, I had a really good time, and you know, I didn't want, you know, to. I probably didn't want to even score against them. It was like that. But, you know, it's just unfortunate. Obviously, I left and played for Palace, and you got to do your job, haven't you? You know? Yeah.
I mean, that's what I mean. It comes back to like what we said earlier. I mean, obviously, us as fans, we're emotionally invested in the team that we support, that we'll always support, kind of thing. But to players, you know, it's your job. You will represent different clubs throughout your career. I mean, there's very, very rare circumstances where a player sticks to one team. But like you say, you know, you move in, you're trying to progress your career in a way, and you're increasing your pressure in doing so. Yeah. So we probably forget as fans that the players themselves in that moment, it's a very emotional thing to do. Obviously, coming up against your former team and that, and then the increased pressure of trying to establish yourself in a new side. I bet you're kind of glad to get that sort of out there. So if any of our listeners, obviously Leon was just emotionally overwhelmed. That was all. It was nothing against
that's us. All it was. That's all it was. Yeah, seriously.
So hopefully you can get a few more City fans back on your side with that. I mean, I think my last question is, I'm going to ask you, because obviously it's a good achievement to have done in your career. You obviously ended up playing Premier League football with, what did you say, Stoke and Burnley?
Yeah.
So you was Premier League football, but you also played international football for, is it Guyana?
Yeah.
What's it like then playing international football for a side like Guyana? And did you qualify obviously through family, or could you have any other? Did you qualify for any other international sides? Why did you end up at Guyana?
It was at a stage in my career. I was in my 30s, and obviously my mum, my grandmother are Guyanese. So I, you know, they said, "Look, do you want to come and play?" So I went and played a few games against Barbados and St. Lucia. In their countries, by the way, so it was a nice trip. But no, it was a good experience, really good experience. You know, doing the national anthem, you know, just a whole different surrounding of South American football. It was a good experience, and I scored, you know, in the World Cup qualifier, 2014 for Brazil. I scored the winner against Trinidad. You know, and that we didn't qualify for the World Cup, but that was the furthest we'd ever got in a group stage.
Yeah.
So that was a big achievement for us as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously, I know Carl was initially in the under-21s, like you said, for England, but he ended up playing for Guyana as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Obviously, did you qualify? Would you have qualified for any other countries, or was it just England or Guyana? Was there any other?
It was England, Guyana, and Jamaica. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Guyana was just mainly through your grandparents.
Yeah, my grandparents and my mum. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So what I'll do then, just before we finish off, I'll ask you, what was your best memory as a Hull City player?
Best memory would say, obviously, it was promotion to championship. But personally, I would say probably one of my goal against Barnsley. I'd say that was quite a big 3 points we needed that day. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but at the moment, I would say Barnsley at home.
Barnsley at home. Yeah, I think I remember the game you're on about. I've got the 2004-5 season review, so I'm going to give that another watch tonight. I think I will look back at some of the goals. Obviously, thanks for joining us, Leon. Absolutely amazing to have a good chat with you because, like I say, it's back in the brighter days where we're kind of missing right now. So it's nice to reminisce. Good luck to everything there. Obviously, with your football agency. Hopefully, everything goes well for you.
Thanks,
and thank you for joining. See you later.
Cheers, bye. See you later, Joel. Take care, mate. See ya.
Right. So for everybody still listening, obviously that was Leon Cort, who I'm assuming most of you will remember, unless you're Joel's age, who joined us as a Premier League plastic.
Whoa, don't be throwing shade like that.
So what we'll do now then is obviously we'll chat about today's pretty awful affair against Stoke. Not many positives we can take from that one, I don't think, Joel. I'm going to ask you where you think it went wrong today. Where was that impetus from Everton gone? What happened?
I couldn't put my finger on why we turned out like we did, but it seemed like the players had absolutely no desire today. They didn't look like they wanted it, and Stoke just decided they were going to just eliminate our main threats, which means that we literally just look like a relegation side. So I think in terms of the Everton game, we had a full, about 16,000 fans. We had about half that today for our game for Stoke, so that could be a factor in terms of why they've played the way they have. But they do need to put their ideas up for the Blackburn game.
Because obviously, if we put in that sort of performance against a Blackburn side that's flying at the moment, and I know Bournemouth have sort of come off the ball, but they've got Premier League standard players in that team, we could be on the back of a couple of hammerings. I think for me today, the most unforgivable thing was the fact that our usual consistent players that we can rely on every week were completely missing. I think George Honeyman was one of the worst players on the pitch today. I thought Greg Docherty was poor. He was hooked off at half time for Moncur. I think Tom Eves struggled to get into the game. Like he could only really work with what he had. So maybe criticism his way isn't as fair. Tyler Smith looked ineffectual. Keane Lewis Potter was marked out of the game. Ryan Longman was decision making was woeful. Tom Huddleston even. We've asked this question on the podcast. I've asked myself who should be starting between Huddleston and Smallwood, and today you'd have to say Smallwood because Huddleston was way off the boil, and I think was a large part of us being such a so porous in midfield. We just looked incredibly fragile at the back. What do we think then? What do we need? Do we think the takeover and the fact that it's taking so long is sort of that anxiety from the fans is creeping onto the pitch, or are we just saying it's maybe just an off day? Is there maybe some extenuating circumstances to it? What we're saying?
I think, to be fair, it could just be an off day because in terms of the squad we've got, we're literally just going to add to it. A lot of these players that are in the first team that started today, they will play for the rest of the season. Some of them will play into next season. So it's not worrying about their positions. It's just, I think it's one of those where they've gone out, they've just not been on it.
I mean, it's tough, in it, because I think I made the observation at some point of the game that yes, we were playing badly, and a lot of our players were, the passing was poor, movement was poor. We seemed really vulnerable, and whenever Stoke attacked, they looked like they were going to beat us. But are we maybe taking away this quality of Stoke a bit too much and blaming our players? Because I personally think that Stoke did a job on us. I think they set up perfectly. I think they double marked Keane Lewis Potter out the game, so he couldn't really have any sort of impact on it. The midfield were all over us. Each player seemed to know what they were doing. As soon as they got the ball, they attacked in numbers. They outnumbered us at the back. Do you think then it's more we played bad, or did Stoke do really well, or a mixture of both?
I was saying at the game to the people that are around me that it's not to do with Stoke playing well, because Stoke just did their job. They saw that we went on it and just thought, well, we'll just beat these, because they didn't have to put they didn't even have to put 100% effort in. Phil Jagielka and James Chester, two veteran centre halves, had a really easy day. They didn't really have to do much running.
Do you think so? I know this will be quite difficult then, but do you think is there any positives from who actually could maybe come off that pitch, hold their heads high, and say, do you know what? I actually gave my everything out there today, and the team let me down. Is there any players that you can find any positives to say about?
In terms of the starting 11, I know I said during the game you put something in our chat about McLaughlin, and I was like, nah. But then as I kind of focused a little bit on him, and he did seem like he was probably the most composed, probably the better player on the pitch from the starting 11. But in terms of the players that really did shine, it was Smallwood and Williams when they came off the bench. They seemed to have a little bit more energy behind them. I think Moncur as well was better than Doherty when he came on. So all three substitutions were better in terms of performance than everyone in our starting 11. So I think them three, out of everyone, come out with their heads held a little bit high.
Yeah, I think the thing was with Sean McLaughlin is I think the problem is it's very easy to identify the centre halves as to be, the reasons for conceding goals or slack defending. I think Deshaun Bernard was way off his usual standards today. I think he was
awful.
I don't know if it's got something to do with the fact that Ryan Longman stayed a lot more advanced than he usually does. Like, he usually offers a bit more support to Bernard, but he didn't seem to today. And I think maybe he was a bit, overwhelmed with the fact that he was always in one-on-one situations, and it probably brought out the anxious side of Bernard, because we're not used to seeing a performance like that from him. But for me, McLaughlin, I honestly think it'd have been about 5 or 6 today if it wasn't for him. I just think that, I think he made something like nearly 10 blocks in the game, which is, by any defender standard in a game, that is quite superb. I think all the last-ditch blocks were usually McLaughlin. I think I watched on Sky, obviously, because I couldn't attend today. But the commentators were wax lyrical about McLaughlin and the amount of blocks he was making, and he did look good. I think that like you say, the fact that the substitutions that came on were far better than the players that started, given the players that we had on the pitch, was probably the biggest indicator as to why we struggled today. I mean, I think someone tweeted out today that our barometer for playing well is George Honeyman, and if he doesn't play well, the team doesn't play well, because he is everything that we do. It comes through him. So if he has an off game, the team has an off game, kind of thing. But Richie Smallwood, when he came on, fantastic. I think when he sort of tried to take the game by the scruff of his neck, real captain. What he should be doing, leading by example. He even probably did more attacking than half the team in the 10-minute period when he came on the pitch, kind of thing. I know he made like some driving run into the box, and I was like, well, where's that been all game, kind of thing. But it's like you say, Randell Williams. Now I've sung his praises on this pod before, and I've argued for him a starting place, and I think he's a pretty good player. Obviously, with the form of Keane Lewis Potter and Ryan Longman, it's justified for him not really to probably be able to get into the side at the moment. What I'm going to ask you is then, I know that obviously we've let McGuinness go to Wigan, and Malik Wilkes is injured. So in terms of strikers, we are pretty much, our hands are tied. It's Tom Eaves and Tyler Smith, or we're bringing either Longman or KLP up top and putting Williams out wide. Do you think that is the way to go forward from now on then? And if so, what combination are you doing? Who are you sticking up top? Who are you dropping? And do you bring Williams into the side? What would you do personally?
Yeah, I would, for the Blackburn game, I'd bring Williams in to see how it goes. I'd put him at left wing back, stick Lewis Potter up front, and put Smith on the bench. Because I think we still do need that big man, little man partnership up front. If you put Smith and Lewis Potter up front together, it's not going to be. It's going to be basically one way of playing. We're not going to be able to lump balls over the top. It's always going to be in behind, and Blackburn will figure that out quite quickly.
Yeah, because I think reading City Twitter today, there was a lot of criticism being thrown towards Tom Eaves, and I know he's obviously not done what a striker should really be doing at a club, for us especially. But did we really? I mean, to be fair, our passing today, our movement, just everything was lethargic. It was disorganised. I thought the shape was totally off. We couldn't get out of our arse. Stoke pressed us in numbers. They went in threes. They kept us pinned in. We had to keep going backwards. In terms of, I think what I'm trying to get at is Tom Eaves. I know he keeps trying to run in behind the shoulder defenders, and we'd probably rather him be the target man that kind of, Josh McGuinness did so well for us last season and bits of this season. Do we need to be taking sort of like a different tactical approach? Because when we're lumping the ball up front, we're trying the in behind all the time. Do we need to start aiming the ball at Eaves to get the best out of him? Do we need to be telling him, hold your position, bring teammates into play, stop trying to get in behind kind of thing? Because I know from a player's standing point, he's probably frustrated he's not getting the ball, so he's coming deeper and then trying to get closer to the goal. But would we fare better from a more direct approach straight to him?
Yeah, I think in terms of Eaves, he feeds off of crosses. So really, what we need to do is we need to put Eaves in the box whenever we can and just get Longman, Lewis Potter, Williams, whoever's on the wings, to swing balls in towards him and can try and get his head onto it. I know he's offside most of the time, or he'll get called for a foul, especially by Championship referees. But that's the way we need to play with Tom Eaves in the side, is getting the ball to his head. And then you could have maybe Smith or Lewis Potter or someone running off him just in case his header's not really accurate.
Yeah, because we did look kind of dangerous when the very rare occasion this game that we actually got the ball into a decent area, especially Randon Williams when he came on. His first thought all the time was whip the ball in. Obviously, he's a left-footed player, so having him on the left-hand side would give us the best chance to do that. I know with Lewis Potter and Longman, it's more they try and cut in and sort of worm their way into the box that way. But with Randall Williams, it probably gives us a different outlet to lump the ball into the box and try and get the best out of Eaves that way. Because obviously we're not going to get technical brilliance off Eaves. He's not the best on the ball, but he's certainly a threat in the air. And if anything, he's going to pull a couple of defenders towards him that are going to try and mark him and leave space for somebody else. So hopefully, like you say, I mean, personally, I would probably also try that combination of Lewis Potter and Eaves up top, and then Randall Williams on the wing back, just to give us that extra dimension when we're attacking. Because when teams figure us out like they did in the previous system, like they seem to be doing now, we still attack that same way, and it's just repeated over 90 minutes, and we're just watching us basically bang our heads against a brick wall and not get any closer. And we're getting to that stage again where we're not winning games and we're not really scoring goals or creating chances. I mean, I think we had something like 3 or 4 shots over the 90 minutes in that. It's not good enough. Like when you play in a 3-5-2 and you've got so many players in attack, you need to be having far more chances than we did. I know Stoke are a good side and they'll probably be up in the playoff mix, but performance-wise, it just needs to be better, and we should be offering at least some sort of attacking threat. So I guess following on from that, then obviously we've got Blackburn next, which is the lovely rescheduled game that got cancelled on Boxing Day, probably too much to the laughter of many City fans and to the hindrance of Blackburn fans. I know it was quite poor decision-making on the day, but, EFL's issue and everything like that, and some poor Blackburn fans were stuck in Hull without a game to go to kind of thing. But they're on fire. Let's not pull any punches. They're up in the automatic promotion race. I mean, personally, I didn't expect them to be up there as they are, but they are. They've got a lot of threats in their team. So what do we need to... What would you change system then for the Blackburn game, or would you stick with the 3 at the back?
But I don't know what we'd change it to though, because we can't go back to 4-3-3 because that's just as ineffective as we was today. So I think we've got to stick with 3-5-2. It's worked for us over a decent spell of games. So I think we do need to look at staying the same and hopefully getting more out of our players in terms of effort and commitment.
And would you bring Smallwood straight back into the side for Huddleston?
Yeah. Huddleston hasn't got the legs anymore. He's not got the legs to start games. He's an impact player at best.
We asked on the podcast account, obviously on a vote, it was who you would start between the two players, and it was sort of unanimously, well, close to being unanimous for Tom Huddleston. It was like 91% that they wanted him to start. I imagine quite a lot of them opinions will have changed after today. I think we see the role that's, what Smallwood offers us in that we were very defensively fragile. The back three were horribly exposed. The midfield three sort of had no coordination. They had no direction. They were all chasing the same ball, which left them a lot of space to then, run straight our back four. So to me, Smallwood has to come back in. Huddleston obviously is better coming off the bench and helping us see a game out when the game's progressed a bit more. And then the other change, I assume, being drop Tyler Smith, Keane Lewis-Potter up top, and Randall Williams on the wing. Would you change anything else then, or is that it?
No, I think you've got it spot on, really, in terms of what you said there. There's not really much I can add to it.
I think what we're going to do now, we've actually got Nathaniel who's going to jump on if he wants to do so. We'll get his thoughts, see what he's going to say.
Green light. I'm going to see if he gives me a thumbs up because he's waiting there. There we go. I do now.
No, then Nathaniel, we jumped on without you.
Good evening.
We delved straight into it.
Well, I can ask really, the same stuff. After today's result and the performance, I don't really want to talk about it. We'll just move on.
Right, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to I put on the podcast account for people to sum it up in 3 words, and I'm going to get some of the responses up because it brought me some joy in what was a very bad game. Let's have a look. So we have absolutely shite garbage, which was Lee Walker.
That's a bit lenient, really.
yeah, going easy on us. You, Nathaniel, announced the takeover. Our Tigers Down Under pod, fucking shit. Fairly,
that's a bit more like it.
Yeah. We need action. Very similar to what you put. Second to everything, which actually is a good point. Throughout that game, second balls, we just had no desire in that sense. Even when the first header was won, loose balls in midfield, they were first to it, which was a huge problem. Lackluster, lethargic, and empty from Hull City Retro. And then my favourite one from Ben Peacham was El fucking Crappo. Beautifully described. So what do you think went wrong today then, Nathaniel? Can you put your finger on where that Everton performance went and how we managed to chuck out that garbage today?
Well, I suppose maybe we were putting too much pressure on because of the Everton result, because we still lost that game. So they won't be, motivated. I mean, this is easy to say in hindsight because I did think it would motivate them, but maybe just because I'd put so much into that game, it's really difficult to. If it was as easy to play like we did against Everton every week and to get that G'd up for a championship game, then they'd do it all the time and we wouldn't be 19th. So, but I think our midfield just kept rushing in and left lots of space. They couldn't, usually we tackled the ball really well in midfield, but today Stoke just wandered through and had too much space. And then, McLaughlin did well defensively with the blocks, but we allowed Stoke too many clear-cut opportunities that fortunately McLaughlin and others were able to block, but they shouldn't be getting into those spaces anyway. So I think the midfield left the defence exposed.
Yeah. I think I mentioned on air and a few people picked up today that, too many of our usual dependable players were just not at the races. You look at Doherty, Honeyman, Deshaun Bernard. I think Baxter maybe a couple of times could have done a bit better. Tyler Smith was poor. Longman's decision making was very bad. Keane was marked out of the game. So across the board, I just thought like the whole shape and the communication just didn't seem to be there. The desire wasn't there. I asked Joel, and I think there's only really one or two contenders for this. But is there any players that you can single out that maybe can actually go into that dressing room and say, you know what? No, I put my heart and soul out there today, and I had a good game.
Well, I think Williams off the bench looked very good. I thought he put some good crosses in, and he gave us a bit of something going forward. I didn't think Longman was that bad. The two chances that he had on the volley, he should have done a lot better with. But I'm always looking out for what he does. So I noticed that generally he was the same, but he wasn't as good as he could be. I mean, I would say McLaughlin, except none of the defenders were great, but Baxter made some good saves as well because we, allowed Stoke to have lots of shots. So I'd go Williams and Baxter.
I mean, obviously, Smallwood came on and made a big difference. We've spoke about whether or not it should be Huddleston or Smallwood playing that role quite a bit on the pod. So do you think then going forward from now on that Smallwood should be in that position? Would you reintroduce him back to the starting 11?
Yeah, I think it's maybe what you said on the last episode. Start Smallwood, and then maybe the last 20 minutes or half an hour, if we're winning or in the game, then you bring Huddleston on, rather than making him play the full 90 minutes or like an hour. He still won't be fully fit, but I thought Smallwood was bad with catching up to players, but Huddleston couldn't turn or run at all. So, I think we start Smallwood and bring Huddleston on later.
Me and Joel came to the agreement that for the Blackburn game, realistically, the only changes that we would make would be to bring Smallwood in for Huddleston, drop Tyler Smith and put Keane Lewis Potter up top, and then bring Randall Williams into the starting 11. Do you agree with that? They're the only changes you'd make?
I think so. That was the lineup against Everton, wasn't it? Oh, except Smith. So, I think I would have gone for those two as well. Unless, the takeover goes through. I don't know if you've talked about that already. We signed some players before Wednesday. I think those two changes are probably quite wise.
I asked, in terms of the takeover, the only time I mentioned it is I asked Joel if maybe the anxiety from the fans, the pressure of this impending takeover that's still not happened, time running out in the transfer market kind of thing. Do you think that potentially is leaking onto the pitch, or do you think it was just literally that was just a bad day at the office?
Well, it's a bit of both. McCann has, before the Stoke game, he didn't say whether the takeover was like a good or a bad thing, but recently he has said that the uncertainty isn't helping. So I think that's probably true. And you could argue it was the same that when we first heard the takeover might go through back in October, that was when our form picked up.
Yeah, because I know McCann said that he hasn't actually had any contact.
Yeah, I think that's quite bad, really.
Do we think that maybe suggests that he's not interested in keeping McCann at all? Do you think that's a sign of...
Well, otherwise, I think it's a bit poor, really, that he's not even met him. Like, maybe you don't talk, lay out a full plan and have, the transfers laid out, but at least, say whether or not he might stay, just to put McCann's mind at ease, because, even though he's not the owner yet, it's still what happens now. He's still able to influence what's going on now by just talking to people. And if he's not spoken to the manager and the manager's uncertain, then probably be best to have a word with him, good or bad, just so he knows.
What do you think then, Joel? Do you think that the fact that he's not got in touch with McCann at all, do you see that as maybe he's just completely disinterested in keeping McCann whatsoever and he's going to install a new manager? I know we've had a few rumours of potential replacements, or do you just think it's just he doesn't need to because he doesn't own the club yet, kind of thing?
I don't know. For me, we don't know what's going on inside the mind of Ilikali and his team. So it could be a case of he doesn't want Mecania when he comes in, or it could just literally just be like you said, a case of he's not the owner yet, so he doesn't necessarily have to go speak to him. And he's only been to one match, so he's not really had much time to be able to actually go and see him, because we do know he is a busy man. He's flying all over the world. So I think once he does take over, fingers crossed it does still go through, that he'll speak to him within the first few hours of the takeover being confirmed.
Yeah.
See, because to me, I think if you think about it like as your job, if a new company was coming in to buy over your company, and you're worrying about whether or not your job safety is secure, or whether they're going to replace the workforce and bring in whoever they want to do, kind of thing, you would assume that at some point during the takeover, especially now that it's reported that it's only with the EFL now and they just need to sign it off and it's done, you would assume that there would be some sort of communication from either, if not himself, somebody representing him, maybe Tan Kessler or somebody like that, and come in and says, look, this is our plans for the future, kind of thing. We're not sure if you're involved. Even something like that could, give him more of a idea of what's going on in the future, kind of thing. Maybe, say to a couple of players, I'm going to give you a new contract when I come in, kind of thing. I just think that, maybe not being as transparent with your plans is probably going to be more of a hindrance to us, especially in the coming few days. I mean, like I said, we're running out of time in the transfer market. Loan players probably don't know where their future lies. Some older players, the contracts are running out. They might be thinking, does this guy want me to stay next season, kind of thing, and subconsciously then drops their performance levels and looks after their fitness a bit more. There's a lot of, existential circumstances that could contribute to sort of a derail of form. Talking about form, then obviously we've got Blackburn and Bournemouth as our next two games. What is our minimum points total from them two games? Because I feel like if we say 2 points, that is another 2 games where we've not won. As good as 2 points against these teams would be, can we afford to go another 2 games without winning?
Well, it depends on the results of the teams below, because, I mean, this is a different scenario to last year where we're currently 4 points above the bottom 3, which is where we don't want to be. But 4 points is a much bigger margin than 4 was last year, when teams are more likely to win around you because they're actually any good. So, I mean, if Peterborough and Barnsley and other teams lose their next 2, I'm happy to lose the next 2 against these good teams. Really, we just need to get through these with maybe a point, or maybe just some good performances or goals, a takeover, and then we can hopefully get 4 or 6 points from Swansea and Preston coming up after.
What about you, Joel? What do you think? What was your minimum points total from these 2 games?
In terms of minimum, we'll get a minimum of 0 because
Probably.
both teams that we're going to be coming up against are top quality championship sides. We are not that. So, like they could have a bad game and we could end up nicking it. It can happen like that sometimes. Derby did it to Bournemouth. So,
Luton have just beaten.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. So anything can happen in this league, but I think in terms of what to expect, we should expect to not get a single point. But like you say, who knows? We could come away with all 6.
Yeah, I mean, like Nathaniel said, as long as we're outside the bottom 3 coming into the season, we've done what we needed to do. But the only reason I asked that question is because, McCann, as we've had him, has runs where we just don't win for a very long time. And this is, 2 games where we could easily extend that winless run. I mean, we won 4 on the bounce, but we haven't won since then. You're going back before Christmas now. We can't really be going into February towards the end of January, where we've nearly gone a full month without winning and not creating many chances. I just don't think, because you've got to think, the fan base, the people who don't want McCann here are going to jump on that straight away. Anxiety over the takeover impending. It just, it creates another sort of whirlpool of negativity that we could really do without at this time of the season. And with Derby picking up some good results, I know Barnsley looked dead and buried, and Corley Woodrow's out for a long time, so that probably relegates them. But Peterborough, you will imagine, will probably start to pick up a couple of good results at some point. Reading probably in a false position, points deduction. I know that they got hammered the other night, but they're a better side than that. I know Blackburn got beat 7-0 by Fulham, so they're handing out hammerings left, right, and centre, aren't they? So it's just one of them. You don't want to get tied into it at the wrong time. And like McCann said today, he basically pleaded in the press, didn't he? He says, this side is desperate for reinforcements. We need this takeover through so we can sign some new players, and we know that, and I think the players probably know that, and it's just we're stuck in that limbo situation, and I think that probably contributed to today's performance, really. But looking forward to these two games. For me, I would probably we're looking at. I mean, I think we're probably going to get 1 or 2 points as a stretch. But for me, if we come out of both games where we played well and actually competed over 90 minutes. That's enough, because it gives us a platform to build on. And it's like we say, it's hard to talk about this every episode because we don't know what's going on. We could be talking in the next episode with a new owner and 5 new signings.
What we really want out of the next 2 games isn't a point or 2, it's a takeover. That's what we need.
Yeah.
I don't care. We could lose both games 10-0 as long as we get the takeover and then are able to sign some players that are actually, decent and not like League One players. Then that would be lovely.
Right, I think we've pretty much covered most stuff from today then. I mean, there's not many positives we can take, and we don't want to dull everybody out with too much negativity. I know we've got 2 tough games coming up next. We'll brace ourselves for it as a fan base, I imagine. But what we will do, now that we've got him on the pod, obviously me, Nathaniel and Will had a good discussion about certain meal deal choices from places. And it was all stemmed from a conversation Joel had as an appearance on another pod that we sort of, I don't know, stolen, if you want to say. So Joel, yours is the only one yet to be revealed now. So ours is out there for public scrutiny. I put a poll out there that vote for the worst one, and mine was the best by poll. These two claim that nobody read it properly.
I didn't read it properly, and Will didn't. None of my family and friends did.
The poll said it was easy information to read. The instructions were there.
By default, you can't win with that prawn sandwich. Disgraceful.
Well, the viewers have spoken, and mine was the best out of the 3. So what is your meal deal then, Joel? Full stocks in. They aren't missing any item, right? So usual meal deal stuff. What main you get in, what snack and what drink. And don't lie, because Will knows your true one. So we'll get the truth.
Well, I'm going to say, I'm literally just going to repeat what I said on the Everton podcast I was on. And I know for a fact it's going to be the worst one as well, because I've got the taste buds of a child. But I usually go for a ham and cheese sandwich. Boring. I know. A bottle of Coke. And either a Whisper Dew or a Boost Dew. Absolutely,
that's functional.
Bland thing you can.
That's fine.
It's
better bland than horrid, like ants.
Oh yeah. Prawn sandwiches never ever.
Society tells you to hate prawn sandwiches, and you do it. You just all need to you need to think for your own. Do either of you two have pineapple on pizza?
I just have pepperoni.
No,
every time.
See, look, you're not expand. Why is prawn okay in some senses, but not in a sandwich?
It's like anything's okay in some situations,
It's fine for West Standers. But no, so Joel's was a ham and cheese. What drink was it?
A bottle of Coke.
Just normal Coke, right? So ham and cheese, a bottle of Coke, and a Boost or a Whisper Duo. Whisper. I'm telling you, if mine loses out to that, I'm going to be fuming. I'm going to put another poll up with clearer instructions, and all 4 of ours will be on it, and we'll have a re-vote of it. I feel I might regret this, to be fair. But
yeah, you will.
I'm standing by it. if I lose to Jules, I'm going to be fuming because that is so blunt. Don't do that. But yeah, so anybody listening, we'll re-put the poll out if anybody stays with us this long to listen to this tripe at the end. But like I said, obviously we had Leon Cort on this episode, so that was a nice chat. We've had Nathaniel and Joel on week, so cheers for joining me, guys, talking about what was quite a drab affair today. Obviously, this episode is sponsored by Hull City Retro and 6 Yards Out, who offer you very affordable, top quality retro gear. And our podcast charity shirt in partnership with Andy's Man Club is available for pre-order right now. The link has been put out a few times. I know it's been a busy time, so some people might have missed it, but sales are going quite well. I do believe we're nearly £150 raised for charity so far. So if you can, do drop yourself a shirt. They are £35, £7.50 of each shirt you buy does go straight to the charity. And they are obviously sponsored by, created by S66 Sportwear, who have been absolutely brilliant with us in designing that shirt. So head over and check that out. All of it will be on our link tree, so go visit the sponsors as well. Obviously, support Hull Badge Man if you can. Struggling at the moment. I know Daryl's having a bad time. I hope he's okay. But yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for joining me, guys. And we will resume this pod, hopefully, and we'll do our trademark finish line. Hopefully, this is the last episode of the Alam era.
We should stop saying it.
Next episode. Because it'll be right eventually. I've got to say it.
Alam in. That'll work.
Yes. Yeah. No, because I can never bring myself to
say that. Never ever say that.
Nathaniel's going to be hung out to dry now. I'm going to clip that. I'm going to clip that bit and post it on Twitter. But cheers for everybody listening. Cheers for the spot. We have just hit 5K listeners, so continue supporting us. It's much appreciated. But thank you, guys. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.